Hi, Mrs. Ellis here. Today we're going to be looking at the poem Liar, another poem in your poetry anthology for your literature exam written by Carol Ann Duffy. Let's look at what the poem's about. The poem is about a woman who cross-dresses. As a man, she now has to create stories to make her actions much more acceptable and polite to society. The poem delivers a message about making judgments, exploring the issues of whether we are in a position actually to judge people on what they do and how they behave. The title is a contrast to the first line of the poem, as we will see in a minute. Liar. Liar, the word liar, suggests a negativity. A word that suggests deceiver or someone who's going to mislead you deliberately. Whereas the first line of the poem is where she says made things up. It's much more positive language, suggesting that it's okay, it's not a lie. The poem therefore suggests that people can have different judgments on different people for what they do. In the first stanza we can see the contrast of made things up. She made things up to make things polite and acceptable, as opposed to the liar title that we have. She wants to be accepted. She doesn't want to lie. So if she makes stories up, that's much more acceptable. She made things up, for example, that she was really a man. Of course she wasn't a man. She was a woman who liked to dress up as a man. After she'd taken off her cotton floral day frock, which is quite old-fashioned language. It's not often that we use the word frock or that we have a cotton floral day frock. It's quite old-fashioned language. She was him, all right, in her head, dressed in that heavy herringbone. Herringbone, again, is a very old-fashioned pattern that you might have for a suit. And so we've got the two words here that connect with the idea of being old-fashioned, perhaps relating to the old-fashioned attitudes of somebody who likes to cross-dress. From Oxfam. He was called Susan, actually. Look at the two words here. Look at the contrast in gender that's presented to us in that one sentence. He being male, Susan clearly being female. The eyes in the mirror knew that, but she could stare them out. So when she sees an image of herself, she knew she was a woman, but she could stare that out and be a man, dressed in her man's suit. On the next stanza we see repetition straight away. Of course a job, of course a humdrum city flat, of course the usual friends, lover. She's suggesting here that of course I have those things. I have a normal life, but I have peculiarities just like everybody else. Everybody else has normal lives, but we don't necessarily know what it is that they like to do. And it might be quite peculiar. Sometimes she lived like you do, a dozen slack rope ends in each dream hand, lugging uselessly on the memory of hope. Look at this next word here. We have the image of rope, and now we have this holophrastic word, frayed. Holophrastic means when you use one word for one sentence, it has impact on its own. Frayed. The rope is frayed. Does the rope represent her control on her mind, on her life, that's becoming frayed? She told stories. Are they becoming frayed? Are they becoming looser? More incoherent? I lived in Moscow once. I nearly drowned. Notice the italics. It's almost like her stories are coming into the poem. The italics represent the stories that she's making up that are set inside this poem. But it ends with the word rotten. which is not in italics. When you see the word rotten, it's very negative and it makes you want to say rotten liar. And it's that juxtaposition of people having judgments, making judgments on her ordinary life, but things that she also likes to do, like cross-dressing. The next stanza details the italics again, and it shows her stories coming into the poem. Lightning struck me, and I'm there to tell. Liar. The words there again. It's almost like she's being infiltrated by other people's judgments. Hyperbole, falsehood, fiction, fib. These are much more positive words for telling lies. Liar is much more negative. She wants people to see, or the readers to understand, that actually we all do it. These synonyms for liar tell people that actually we all do it in a way. In our lives we all tell little lies, little fibs, a little bit of fiction here and there. Were pebbles tossed in the evening's flat pool, her bright eyes fixed on the ripples? It's an evening pool, there are only pebbles. The rings that go from a lie, like a stone in the pebble, really don't go very far. They don't make huge waves or tsunamis. They don't affect many people. No one believed her. Our secret films, our private affairs, watched behind the eyes. She spoke in subtitles, not on. She's saying we all have secret images, secret ideas, things that we do in our own mind and we do in our own private areas. On the final stanza, we see that the speaker forces the reader to make a judgment from bad to worse. What's gone from bad to worse? What's happened? They want us to answer it, and we can't at this moment, but until we read the stanza, then we discover actually what has happened. The ambulance whinged all the way to the park where she played with a stolen child. You know the rest. Stolen child. She's become confused as to what actually is right and wrong now. What actually is the difference? Her boundaries have been confused. People making judgments on her. Is she right? Is she wrong? She feels normal. She likes to dress in a man. She's doing nobody any harm. But she's lost the boundaries. She's lost her way. The man in the long white wig who found her sadly confused. This is a reference to a judge. A judge found her sadly confused. He's made a judgment on her. A man sitting in court in a wig. The irony is very clear. He's dressing up as an old institution. Maybe Duffy is having a critical look at the old institutions and how we run them. That a man sits in a wig in a chamber that makes a judgment on you, and he's sitting there in a wig. It makes you think. And he finds her sadly confused. He makes a judgment on her mental state. The top psychiatrist who studied her in jail. This is again old-fashioned language as we saw in the other stanza, suggesting these are old-fashioned ideas. People make old-fashioned judgments, old-fashioned attitudes and beliefs. Then went back home and did what he does every night to the Princess of Wales. So it's just like the judge, the irony. It's just like the top psychiatrist who's looked at her, made his judgments on her in jail, obviously, studied her and counselled her. And then he goes home to his own peculiarities, to his own things, and that, in this case, is to spend the night either as or with the Princess of Wales in his mind. Let's talk about the structure. On the face of it, the poem is a straightforward stanza poem, but look more closely. The structure of the poem highlights her struggle to do and be what she wants to be. It is fragmented with direct speech, representing the lies that she tells and the judgments that is made by the speaker through the holophrastic sentences, those single sentences. Let's have a look at how we could read this alternatively. Alternatively, the poem could be making a judgment on those people in society who hide their true personas, just as she did, cross-dressing. They have to live in secret and or lead double lives in order to appear normal. But that can only lead to confusion and ultimately psychological damage if you can't accept who you are and what you do. And society makes that difficult for you to do that.